Good morning. It is my professional and personal honor to participate in this hearing. I'm here today seeking accountability for the appalling situation at United States Penitentiary, Atlanta. Once the flagship of the BOP, it is now a penitentiary in name only. As the chief psychologist at USP Atlanta from 2018 to 2021, I repeatedly reported ongoing, uncorrected, gross mismanagement of suicide prevention practices, staff misconduct, and general operational deficiencies. Unfortunately, the only response I received was unlawful retaliation. I was involuntarily transferred to an FCI in Seagoville, Texas. Though I'm speaking today in my personal capacity, I have been an employee of the Federal Bureau of Prisons for 15 years. For the first 11, I was assigned to various psychology departments at high or maximum security male institutions. From 2015 to 2018, I was a psychologist with a supervisory role in the Supermax, also known as the ADX, the facility in Florence, Colorado, the most secure institution in the country. In 2018, I accepted the chief psychologist position at USP Atlanta, where my mission was to turn around a deficient, failing psychology department. I was responsible for integrating standardized procedures on inmate mental health issues, the provision of sound clinical care to the inmate population, developing and implementing mental health treatment and best practices, and tracking and analyzing program adherence. Like most BOP employees, I am first and foremost a federal law enforcement officer. In addition to providing mental health care, I'm responsible for ensuring the safety and security of the community, the staff, and the inmate population. That includes pat-downs, searches, and other security-related duties. Upon my arrival, and for the duration of my time at USP Atlanta, the facility was falling apart. Elevators were inoperable for months at a time. The walls were infested with mold. Whenever it rained, the sewer would back up and overflow onto the recreation yard, sometimes leaving a foot of human waste behind. Security-wise, there was little to speak of. Given the volume and flagrancy of the contraband, it was obvious that cell searches were not being properly conducted, if at all. For instance, I confiscated a microwave that I found while searching an inmate's cell. 2 days later, I found the same microwave in another cell. It was the same serial number. Of course, my assignment and primary concern was the inmate mental health and suicide prevention. In the roughly 4 years, 8 inmates at USP Atlanta died by suicide, 2 prior to my arrival and 6 during my tenure. To put this into perspective, federal prisons typically see between 1 and 3 suicides over a 5-year period. Any loss of life is tragic and unacceptable, which is why it is particularly devastating to see such disregard for human life at USP Atlanta. BOP policy requires that a suicide reconstruction team is sent to investigate circumstances of any inmate suicide. The team prepares a report detailing findings and making recommendations to prevent reoccurrences. This report is sent to on-site, regional, and national offices in the BOP, and the institution must provide a written response to any recommendations. While at USP Atlanta, I reviewed 7 reconstruction reports, each prepared by different teams, and all 7 reports featured some same issues. Inmates suffering from ongoing substance abuse, easy access to drugs, unit rounds which were required to be done every half hour were routinely skipped for hours at a time. I repeatedly expressed my concerns about other systematic failings to management, and nothing was done. Despite desperate need for reform, any suggestion for change was met with resistance. That's not the Atlanta way. Some of the examples of the Atlanta way included an employee yelling threats and obscenities, aggressively approaching an executive staff member. Though I was 5 months pregnant and terrified, I stepped between the two and pushed the employee away. I reported the employee, and nothing was done. Another time, my husband was repeatedly hit by a staffer. He required medical attention, and the attacker remained at work. I was warned to stay away from him. In 2020, a program review team found that the staff had broken machines intended to detect traces of drugs. This had been going on for a year. The agency's response was to move 43 mid-level supervisors across the countries. It was during the midst of the COVID pandemic. Our families had set down roots and we had done nothing wrong. The agency refused to give us responses. Today, I'm asking that you help this agency, staff it at 100%, provide mid-level management with tools to actually make changes. We have lots of responsibility, and yet we have little authority. When there is discipline, make it fair and swift. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Ms. Whitehead, you may now deliver your opening statement.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Ossoff, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. Who am I and why am I here? I am an upper management retiree after serving more than 30 years with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I am here because of the many abuses and gross management I personally witnessed while serving at USP Atlanta. I was shocked and appalled by the USP Atlanta big picture. On a daily basis, there were numerous policy violations which put the staff, inmates, and the local community in danger. For example, there were so many rats inside the facility dining hall and food preparation areas that staff intentionally left doors open so the many stray cats that hung around the prison could catch the rats. It is never a good idea to leave prison doors open. There was no professional pest control service in place because management officials could not work together and determine which department or budget was responsible for the cost. I arrived at USP Atlanta in August 2020, 6 months into the pandemic, and at that time, staff were not provided appropriate PPE to perform their duties within the pandemic. Also, there were no designated COVID-19 isolation or quarantine areas in the detention center unit. In August 2020, it was reported half of the 300 security cameras did not operate appropriately, and the other half were off by 3 hours. This was not the first time this had been reported. There were missing security controls and equipment to include keys, handcuffs, and pepper spray. Key control at other BO facilities that I have worked is paramount to maintaining safety and security. Then there is the Atlanta way. The Atlanta way is far from norm and certainly not the Bureau of Prisons way. Most of the staff at USP Atlanta are very proud that Atlanta does things intentionally different. The BOP has a policy on staff conduct and ethics. Reports of unethical behavior must be investigated, and if warranted, discipline is imposed. However, at USP Atlanta, the Atlanta way is where staff are not held accountable for misconduct. Inmates are not challenged for negative behavior, and regular maintenance and routine repairs are non-existent. Staff members are actually involved in physical fights at work, which cases are uninvestigated and/or staff subsequently promoted within. Marijuana is routinely smelled inside the prison, but there are no searches to determine which inmates were smoking. Inmates are observed in zombie state, and nothing is done in an effort to determine the source of the illegal substances. All BOP staff members are correctional workers first, to include secretaries, psychologists, teachers, and wardens. Conducting searches is Corrections 101 at BOP facilities. I never saw a pat search conducted at USP Atlanta. And in August 2020 and July 2021, reports indicate area searches were not being done. As the jail administrator at USP Atlanta, I tried to make positive changes by voluntarily training less experienced staff, by correcting security violations and reporting staff misconduct. My efforts were very unappreciated. I was ostracized by staff. I was victimized by the agency with a forced relocation to a Texas facility, which led to my retirement much earlier than planned. In August 2021, the pseudo-solution to addressing the USP Atlanta problems was to move 43 management officials out of 432 staff members. What I witnessed was outrageous. I never expected to be here today. Now that I am, I ask for your immediate help. I truly believe the problems can be fixed with the right people and mindset. Please continue the kind of oversight you are doing today. Hopefully, it will result in real accountability and stop the abuses you are hearing about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Whitehead. Ms. Shepherd, you may now deliver your opening statement. And to our panelists, you may hear buzzes and bells from the camera, and they have nothing to do with you or your time. They're just indicators of what's happening on the floor, so don't be alarmed. Ms. Shepherd.
Chairman Ossoff, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to this hearing. Today, I focus my testimony on the unacceptable conditions of confinement for clients who are detained pre-trial, awaiting trial, and presumed innocent at USP Atlanta. Defenders see firsthand how USP Atlanta subjects people to inhumane and substandard conditions and limits their access to attorneys, which in turn interferes with their Sixth Amendment right to counsel. The result is deplorable and punitive conditions which courts, defenders, and our clients have observed for decades. I want to begin by sharing a clear picture of what life inside is like. One client, and I will call him Jacob for the purpose of this hearing, described his experience in a 2019 affidavit that I've submitted as Exhibit B. Jacob was held in an overcrowded pod where he was locked into his cell for 24 hours a day, 3 to 4 days at a time. He was one of 3 people squeezed into a 2-person cell. When Jacob was allowed outside of his cell, it was for less than an hour every few days. The pod only had 6 showers and 3 phones that had to be shared by about 100 people, making it impossible for everyone to shower and make phone calls. When out of his cell, Jacob had to choose whether to call his family or to call his attorney, but he could not do both. Even worse, Jacob's cell was infested with roaches, and when he asked for cleaning supplies, the guards merely laughed. I'm sorry to say that Jacob's experience is not at all unique for Atlanta pretrial detainees. During my 8 years as a defender, I have seen clients routinely locked down and allowed out of their cells for extremely limited periods of time, such as only 15 to 30 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week, or only an hour each day. And these lockdowns persist for months. Clients are treated as though they are in solitary confinement, not because of their behavior, but because of their misfortune in being placed at USP Atlanta. Lockdowns mean that my clients cannot meet their basic human needs, cannot communicate with their families, cannot visit with clergy, and cannot participate in productive programming. Jacob also described receiving substandard food and hygiene at USP Atlanta. His dinner was routinely slices of bread and packages of expired deli meat, and he could not supplement his diet with commissary because it was limited to only instant coffee and potato chips. Again, Jacob's experience is not unique. Our clients go months at a time with only sack lunches provided for every meal served in their cells. Sometimes they find bugs in their food, and we see the impact as our clients lose weight and become emaciated. Given these fundamental failures of care, it should come as no surprise that USP Atlanta routinely denies our clients access to mental health treatment, including medication, therapy, and access to mental health professionals. As Chairman Ossoff referenced earlier, one person on pretrial detention was held for a week on suicide watch without access to treatment or medication, provided only a paper gown and paper blankets. I want to turn to a different topic next, which is how USP Atlanta interferes with the Sixth Amendment guarantee of effective assistance of counsel. USP Atlanta's practices and policies do not allow us to fulfill our constitutional and ethical obligations of zealous advocacy. First, there are scheduling delays and difficulties as USP Atlanta staff members fail to respond to requests for legal meetings, often for several days and despite repeated requests. It is not unusual for the date of the expected meeting to pass and for there to still be no response from staff members. And scheduling a meeting does not mean that the meeting will actually happen because of the facility's chaos and disorganization. When we do get to meet with our clients, it is often after hours of waiting. And while we wait, we are on the clock, along with the experts and interpreters that often come along with us. So taxpayers are bearing the cost of USP Atlanta's incompetence. Clients' access to their discovery, the government's evidence against them, is also limited because clients do not have enough access to the law library due to the lockdowns and have no ability to review electronic discovery with their attorneys. Even when a court has intervened and ordered USP Atlanta to allow law library access, the facility has failed to comply. The circumstances that we detail today are inhumane and unjust, but they are avoidable and they should not be the norm. Unfortunately, the problems at USP Atlanta are part of a larger story of systemic dysfunction. My written statement includes several recommendations for ways this body could address this unconscionable state of affairs. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today, and I welcome any questions you may have.